All right. Well, listen, tonight is a very special evening. I get to have my coach and one of my mentors, Dr. Dan Sullivan, calling in this evening. And Dan has been a really big influence on how I really honed in on telling my story about how Softwave really changed my life. And the way he helped me adapt my 3-minute story was really instrumental in me helping communicate my story in a better way. So really tonight is about Dr. Dan, and thank you so much for you, Dr. Josh Axe and David Toohill, for everything you guys have done to help really bring Softwave to more people across the North America. So Dan, thank you. Come on.
Thanks, buddy. Let me start off with this. If there was any sort of area that you want to make sure I nail, I mean, we know story, but what would you say, Doc, is the biggest struggle or the biggest challenge or maybe the biggest hurdle that most docs want to overcome, particularly on this line?
I mean, I'll open it up to the floor as well, but I would say everyone wants to learn more conversion. Like they want higher conversions. They want more people to accept this. I think where you helped me so much when I was, when I would talk to the doctors, it was like, it slices, it dices, it's a floor wax. You're like, hey, you've got to really laser focus on what that message is to the patient. And I think you helped me so much in the fact that you're like, this is really a high patient case acceptance. The diagnostic part of this, where we find out if there are candidates for this within 10 minutes. And really, how you really showed that it was little doctor time and a high rate of return. I know a lot of some of the docs you're coaching also have had great success with this, like Dr. Kirby Peralt in Michigan. So, and anybody else, Dr. Jamie Tungate he's growing so fast. He had to go into a bigger space. He has to find a new doctor now. He's tapped out. So, again, this might be such a new device that so many people don't know, and the red flag goes up. So how do we help with that?
Yeah.
Anything else that anybody, any doctor, Dr. Jeremy, anything you'd like to add?
I think we're good.
Okay.
Okay. And if anybody has anything, you guys can.
You're muted.
Okay, so thanks. It's like anytime I touch my screen, it mutes. Here's what I want you to know. And if you have any questions along the way, just put in the chat. I may spark some for you. I'm going to challenge everyone here on the line because most are probably chiropractors. And if you're not, you still are in an industry of natural health. And I want you to think of anybody that is like it's a big influencer in your space, right? Like anybody that's an influencer, including Dr. Matt, but anybody, literally anybody. I mean, the circles that kind of we come from, whether it be, Sid Williams back in the day, you just name whoever it may be, right? I want you to think about why they are an influencer, like why they have gotten attention and notoriety and platforms and worthy of listening to. And I'm going to challenge you in the sense that you're probably, if you haven't thought of this, I have yet to find, and if you know somebody out there, let me know who they are, that has gotten any sense of influence and notoriety, popularity, and really any ability to really capture people's attention and trust outside of their own story, meaning their ability to tell their story. But more importantly is most didn't know this going in, and I'll kind of share a little bit of my mind, but like, we don't think about a story being the key ingredient to why people would buy. But I'm going to tell you right now, and it isn't actually the reason why people buy is not because they understand, not because they're going to understand the software and the physiology that, it exists within it and how it, has uses the recuperative power of the body that nobody talks about. And this thing is, one of a kind. As much as we love that, they're not buying because they understand it. They're buying because they feel understood. And part of feeling understood in the world that we're in right now, the Softwave world, is that they have to have this aha in their mind of, wow, that's exactly how I feel. And so I'm just going to challenge you. This one I want to kind of talk through here on this particular call is to think about what most people coming in, what their context around something like Softwave is. Because once you can nail this, right? And man, I'm going to try not to go down a lot of rabbit holes, but people buy for one reason. They buy because they feel like it. There's no other reason. Like I can go to the neuroscience. If it's emotion, it's not logic, it's not facts. They buy because they feel like it. When it comes to something like a technology like this, they're in pain. They have a condition. They have something they want to get rid of. And I could go down a path of, hey, there's a reason why they want to get rid of it. It's about status. It's about being able to, make love to their spouse, or it's about being able to golf again or pick up their grandkid, or they're just worried that you're going to end up like their, sister-in-law who can't walk after 72. Like, they all have different motives. But at the end of the day, they're buying because they feel like it. And so what I want to get across to you is, number one, and I'll give you an example of this, but number one is facts tell, as this title, this facts tell, stories sell. I can describe it to you from a biological sense, as we can measure oxytocin, which we have. Paul Zak in the laboratory in Santa Clara, California, has shown that when you tell a story in the right way, it increases oxytocin. Oxytocin is the bonding hormone. The bonding hormone is the trusting hormone. And that's when they're going to actually pay you more money by having a bond. But if you only have a couple minutes, how would you be able to do that? Or 5 minutes, maybe a 10-minute, example. One, the beauty of, don't tell them when you can show them, don't even tell them or show them when you can have them experience it, in this world. But I'm going to challenge everyone that if you are not communicating using story, particularly starting with your own story, I'm going to show you how you have one, you're missing out on the single greatest technology known to man, and it will never change. Buyer's behavior may change. We may get pissed off that it's, takes us 2 clicks instead of 1 click. But I think about how much time in the last 15 years, you had a mom, a dad, a grandma, a sister, whoever that would never put their credit card into the internet. I mean, they would just as soon give Satan their credit card number than the internet 15 years ago. And now they're mad that it's 2 clicks to get something direct to their doorstep. And they're mad that it takes a day when it should take 6 hours. Like, if you just look at how quickly things have changed, but here's the cool part. Behavior has changed, but the buyer's brain has not. And so, dating way back early on, we were told stories. It was the single way, and it still is to this day. And so I want you to, if we were live, I would have you repeat after me, but I want to have her repeat. But this is reality. If there's no conflict, there's no story. If there's no conflict, there's no story, or no story worth telling. Right? A story has to have conflict. Now I got a whole formula, and I'm not going to go into the whole formula, but unless somebody wants to know more about that. But the point is, if I show up, so here's an example. Some of you are just like me, where you just fax data. Like, for me, I grew up in a medical family. My 2 brothers are medical doctors. My mom's a nurse for, she retired 38 years being a nurse. My sister's an occupational therapist. So I'm the 5th of 8 children. I've got a big family. I was the black sheep. I got injured pole vaulting in high school. And I injured my back, and I went to every doctor. It was the trainer, and then the physical therapist, then it was the MD, our family physician. And then, there was an orthopedist, then this neurologist, then bone specialist, and just this, fMRIs and bone scans, and all the way to my mom. We were in Omaha, Nebraska at the research center. And I'll never forget the guy's name, Dr. Froggett. He literally pulled my mom outside. We were in a consultation. He pulled my mom outside the door. And next thing I knew, actually, when I relive it, like, my mom's like, okay, we're done here. And she got me, and we drove 2 hours back home. On our way home, she said, well, she said, he told me that he thought that you were faking it because there's no tests that indicate what's wrong. And 3 days later, my siblings had a dentist appointment and back home, and our family dentist said, you should try chiropractor. We didn't know what that was. I was 16 years old, but we were up for anything. And it's kind of like the rest is history. I go into this place, I'm like, this is kind of first off, weird. There's no way this guy's got my solutions, when I just went to the biggest facilities with the best technology and the, big windows. And then lo and behold, this guy shows me an x-ray of my, pelvis. It looks like this. He goes, there's your problem. I'm like, there's no flipping way. This is too simple. And, he adjusted me for that time. And I like knew this is part of the problem. Like, no doubt about it. This is part of the problem. Like, he is getting to something that nobody else is dealing. And my mom had recently told me this about 5 years ago. She goes, Dan, you remember what you told me when we left. We get into our station wagon and I said, I have no idea. She goes, we got to the parking lot and you looked at me and said, Mom, why didn't you bring me here first? And it's funny how that's played out in my life. I've traveled all over the world, spoken internationally just about health and chiropractic and neurology. And now about how do we take this message of natural health and communicate it? And this is where Softwave comes in, right? So now I was the first to show up on anybody's doorstep and to be able to overwhelm them. Like I remember I was at a ranch with Guy Reekman in 2004. I was a student at the time and I was at his ranch and there was like 30 of us doctors and students. And I remember telling him and I just thinking to myself, like, if I just have, he was going over how actually in Atlanta, he goes, there's this chiropractor I met in Atlanta who his report of findings is basically, he brings them in and he just lays out all the data. Like he lays out this research and that research, and here's the research on chiropractic, but here's research on medicine. And this is why they're going to harm you. And and I remember thinking to myself, I literally can remember him on this stool. And I was like, that's exactly how I want to do it. That is exactly how I want to do it. Lo and behold, I'm just living this world through my own, not insecurities, but more, I got to prove it to my own family and people that what I'm going to do is valuable. Right. And so I have always lived that. Like, that's why I've been drawn to the science. I came out and started practice and went from 0 to 1,000 a week in 4 years as a single doctor office. I don't recommend it, but we did it. We're crushing numbers and just helping people. And then I kind of needed to know why this thing works. And so I studied with Murphy and Chestnut and all the scientists, and I wanted to know, and then kind of led down that trajectory. All that to say, a lot of you are still educating and or communicating with facts and data. And it's easy to do that, especially with a piece of technology like the Softwave. And so last story I'll tell here, and then I'll kind of give you some tactics is Steve Jobs. You guys know the story of Steve Jobs, right? So in 1989, he created this computer. It was $10,000. And he says, I'm going to get this computer to the world. And so he took out a 9-page ad in the New York Times. And it was a list of all the features and benefits of this amazing new device. Everything, how it could benefit you, all the technology, all the background of it. And clearly it didn't work out very well. And so, Apple fired him. He ends up going to Pixar, connected with, he actually had a guy that worked for him named John Lasseter, and actually Listerine came to John Lasseter and asked if he would do a commercial. They were in animation at the time. And Lasseter said, yes. Listerine did a commercial, or Listerine did so Listerine paid him to do a commercial. And anytime something made money within, Steve Jobs' world, he was all over it. So he said, what did you do? And he said, well, I made a commercial, this animation. And so that led him down this path of animation. And then they started on, hey, we're gonna do these Pixar movies. And the first Pixar movie was Toy Story. He spent the next several years with some of the best storytellers of the time. And so they create this movie. He realized in those moments of being around the best storytellers, but also like in kind of studying movie and story, he came back and he realized when he got back to Apple, there was a whole nother story, but when he got back to Apple, he realized we're going to focus on two things. We're going to focus on what the customer wants, and we're going to focus on story, meaning we are going to be so customer centric, and then we're going to tell story like we did with Toy Story, right? With this animated film. And it turns out, kind of the long story short is he ends up taking that 9-page ad, right? And you guys have heard this, like, is this for the misfits, the round pegs and square holes? He realized who's our avatar audience, who the people we're trying to reach are these secret geniuses who go underappreciated and nobody's paying attention to them. But deep down, they know they are a secret genius. And what we're going to do is we're going to speak to that. And we're going to give them the tools, the technology, and the devices to actually take their secret genius and become known and take their purpose and fulfill that calling. And so it was about that customer, that person that they defined. And then he turned that 9-page ad into 2 words: think different. And so you guys have heard the Simon Sinek, kind of golden circle video on YouTube, third most watched video on YouTube, or on third most watched TED Talk. And he says people don't buy why you do what you do, or people don't buy what or the how, they buy the why first and foremost. And it turns out that's exactly what we need to do, and we need to lead. And that's where facts tell, stories sell. Like, I could go through so many studies, and I'm not going to, and bore you with, when you add a story. These one guys bought these little trinkets on eBay, and they actually tried to sell them, couldn't. And then they actually hired an author to put a story to each one of these things. And they sold them for 38x what they paid for them. All because a story went with this little like thing you would buy at, at a little craft store or get at, Chuck E. Cheese. It's fascinating. You go look at that significantobjects.com. So why does this matter? Because if you're looking to convert more people, you've got to figure out how that human brain is wired, and not that you need to know it. It's just, you need to know how to tell your story better. And so Dr. Matt is a great example of somebody who came in and, I said, there's no conflict. There's no story. Conflict is like, so I'll give you an example and then I want to open it up for questions. Conflict, or, if I walk into a room and I'm trying to sell Softwave, and it's like, Mary, good to see you. Listen, we've got some of the greatest technology. This thing works with the recuperative powers of your body. This is amazing. I'm going to tell you, we see amazing testimonies with this. I'm so excited. Our patients are like head over heels with this. We've got, care plan. We've got plans to make sure you get the best bang for your buck and the benefits. And this is going to be great for you. Now, that's not bad, right? And I can go through some evidence and throw some more studies on that. Versus, I walk and say, Mary, here's the thing. I got to be honest with you. I've been in this long time, the last 15 years, helping people as a natural healer and chiropractor. And I really had this moment where it really hurt my heart and more kind of pissed me off that I see people still going to medicine and needing to rely on drugs, rightfully so, because they're in pain, that I couldn't help them as a chiropractor. I wanted to, and everything we could do, I still couldn't get to some of the bottom line of their knee problems, their elbow problems, their shoulder problems. And I even some of their back problems, some of these long-term chronic conditions. And I like to tell you, I take pride in the work that we do, but there were just some things that we couldn't help, and chiropractic couldn't help. And so I kind of searched the highways and byways. Like, I went out and sought, because the one thing is we don't do drugs here. We want to do the least invasive possible. And I wanted to figure out, and I'm going to tell you, this showed up on my doorstep. I would have never, ever thought that something like this even exists. And sure enough, some technology came across and I was introduced to this. And I'm going to tell you, I would think it was a lie if I didn't actually see it for myself. We have walking, talking, breathing testimonies. And I'm going to tell you, people that are in chronic pain over and over and over again, that are down on death's door in terms of opioid. So you can see I could go on and on and on, right? But see, what I had to do there is I had to reveal that I'm not the prize here. And I have to, right? Like, we're Dr. Matt's story, and he does a better job. You guys have all heard it in the sense of telling his own story. But my paraphrase of like, hey, listen, I was a chiropractor. I was doing this for a long time. I was teaching. I was at the highest. I've been adjusted by the best of the best. And I still had this elbow problem. And then someone said that, I get devices thrown at my doorstep, every month. And so another guy. And this one guy kept at it. And all of a sudden I'm like, you know what? All right, I'll I end up driving up to, 30 minutes and I got this done. And if I didn't experience it, I would also think that somebody was lying to me. Is that, I kid you not, that every time I would golf, I literally would have to take an entire next day. Like, I couldn't golf for another week because my elbow would be so. And I just thought that was the way I was going to have to live. And I was okay with it. It's not like I was, had to lose my limb, but I never thought. I've tried so many things over and over again. I've tried this and that, but boom, right? So, and Matt, obviously I'm using your story, and I'm butchering it. But my point is, see, now I'm intrigued. Now it separates everything else, because you're not just, see, the part of a story is that it creates motive. Right? You got to recognize motive. Everybody left to their own devices, they think that your motive is self-interest. This is going to help your bank account and your practice and your model, right? Versus when I tell a story and there's a conflict in it, and I have a little bit, I have to be vulnerable a little bit in there. It actually turns it to, my motive is, I can't stop talking about this. I'm not passionate about this because it's a good business model. I'm passionate about this because there are so many people out there literally becoming addicted and prescribed these opioid drugs that they don't need if they do the right things, or that they may not need if we know and can find a problem that we can deal with. And so I am now responsible, and I'm passionate. You can tell, obviously, with the work that we do here, and we won't stop talking about this. So it's that motive. It helps them understand, wow, this guy, this gal, I could see, and when you take the motive off of your interest and put it on their interest, and there's nothing that can do that like a story. Again, back to Simon Sinek, they don't care about the what or the how before the why. And so that why helps you. And now some of you on this line are thinking, well, I don't have a story. Why? You do have a story. There's a reason why you put this in, right? And it had more to do than just your bank account. I guarantee you. And you have to dive deep into what that is. Some of you, it's very evident. It's like, well, yeah, I'm like, I've tried everything. And then somebody put this on my knee and I'm like, and if you're not using that story, if your staff is not using that story, yeah, Dr. Matt here, the reason why we have this is literally he was, on surgery's door for his, knee. And then, so they is one of his doctor friends introduced him. And now, it's boom, 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 testimony after testimony after testimony. And so that's the point. There's nothing you may ask, okay, do we use a testimony of a patient or your own? It depends. You get to use it, but I would say there's nothing more captivating than your own story. Even if you think my story is not as good, your story must be. You have to flesh it out. You have to be able to understand and be able to articulate that. So, Dr. Matt, I'll let you. I don't know. I just went off there for 20 minutes.
No, it's perfect. Exactly what I was looking for. And I'll tell you, you always say this too. Who's the hero in the stories? Right? You have to have a villain. You have to have, in our case, it may be, opioids, narcotics, the risk of accidental overdose. I mean, I think people are at this point, and, especially our baby boomer generation, we don't want to have that risk of accidentally overdosing. Like, we've lost too many wonderful artists and musicians and celebrities that we want to take that off the plate. So I love how you always kind of draw into Disney, like the way Disney told a story. And a lot of times people were motherless. It was like really a scary story. Like, when you really break down to the basic level, can you kind of chat about that a little bit, Dan? And who is the hero?
Well, yeah, that's a great point, right? Because you would think that the reason why we tell the story is about ourselves, but who we're talking to rather, is always the hero, right? Donald Miller goes through this well in his book Story Brand, even in marketing. Like, we tell our story for them. They are the hero of the story. Now, it's interesting you say villain, because you're right. Every story must have, every great story as a villain. I mean, this is a script, it's a Hollywood script. Like, nobody rewrites the wheel here. Like, it is what it is, right? But the villain, and partly, again, this is going to be unique to you guys. Like, when I could tell my own story, like when I look back, building a chiropractic practice, and say, how do you do that? Do you go to 1,000 a week? And it's like, well, I just literally told my story over and over and over again. I can remember vividly, like, man, if I didn't have my story, like, there would be times I would go in an individual doctor, like an individual report, because I used to do like group reports, and I would go in an individual report, and I would have to be fast, and I would leave out the story. And I felt so, it sounds weird. For a while, I never even admitted to anybody this, because I feel like this is an amateur hour. Like, I feel like I'm going to tell somebody, if I don't tell my story, that I feel a little bit, I just didn't feel like when I talk about finances, I was very apprehensive. But when I would tell my story, I would look down at finance. I'm like, I can't believe it's this cheap. Like, I can't believe but if I didn't tell my story, I feel like this, they're probably gonna have a financial problem or insurance question, or they're gonna have some sort of excuse about money, because I had nothing. It's like kryptonite. Like, but when I had the story, I always had something to fall back on to realize, listen, if you think that's expensive, I'm going to tell you what's expensive is you end up down in that path, right? And it's the same thing when you say villain, and everybody has a little bit different villain, right? Some people I met, it's like, hey, the villain is the fact that the villain is the fact that we look at health to just patch it with drugs. Now, that's not to say I'm bad mouthing a drug. I'm just saying it's a philosophy more than anything. The philosophy of, if you went into a car dealership, we all heard that, and there was a check engine light, and somebody came out with a thing of black electrical tape, and they put it over there and said, "You're good to go. Just $100. We're fixed." Like, I know we say that, it sounds a little sarcastic, a little extreme. It's like, that's no different. Here's your drugs, and like, that could be the thing. That could be the villain right there. And to say, no, what we do is we're looking for causes of problems, and what this technology allows us to do is to not heal you. This technology does not heal. There's no capabilities of healing. This technology has an ability to work with the body and actually come to surface your recuperative powers that were already inside you. It's just that now we have technology to be able to isolate that healing that you need, that's all over your body, into certain areas. This is why we see such amazing results with things that people would have never thought. I mean, people literally on drugs for 30, 40, 50 years, and or staring down the surgery, or even post-op, and so, right? So that villain becomes, I would say, it's your choice. I can kind of like, for me, I have two brothers medical doctors. I was mom's nurse. Like I'm in that model. I wanted to be just like our brother. So I kind of hammer that model because I have this thing background. Like I loved it more than anybody. But now my villain is I didn't understand that the treatment of symptoms was a big problem. And so this is where, making them the hero, to your question, they're the hero.
The other thing you pointed out to me early on, 2+ years ago, is that, let's face it, the stem cell clinics and regenerative medicine clinics, they were feeding on the consumer. That was all driven by the consumer. Remember this, Dan, you telling me? And, it's like, it doesn't really align well with our chiropractic philosophy to take like some type of biological fluid, inject it into the body, charge $7,000 for that injection, and then, roll the dice. And hopefully it's like, people out there, they want something different. They're sick of, cortisone injections, joint replacement, 30 years before, they're 50 years old and getting joint replacement. So you always said to me, Matt, if you tell your story and no one will ever question your motives of what you were doing. Like that was the biggest thing. It's like, we didn't just bring this in for our patients. We brought it in to fix us, and from the longevity standpoints, and to fix our family members and our patients that weren't being helped. So touch on that, like how that whole consumer driven thing that you really were the first to highlight for me.
Well, here's what I'll tell you. I may even say something that is maybe different than I've said in the past. It's not different. It's just saying here's the thing. From an individual standpoint, you've got to decide once you go down that path, like think about who you want in your office anyway. Yeah. Can this help anyway? But but like, you can't help everybody. You have to detach. They need you way more than you need them. And when you detach yourself from that and you are able to go in and say, listen, I do want the people who at least align more with, if you love drugs and you're loving your drugs and you're like, chances are you're not going to be the best alignment. You're not that it can't work. And obviously the technology does work, but I'm saying someone on this line needs to hear like, yeah, you're right. Like I'm reading a book right now. Actually, I failed to mention, but it's called Oversubscribed. It's so fantastic, but it just goes through. It's like, you only need a few thousand people. You don't need tens and tens and tens of thousands of people to build the business you're looking to build and have the impact you're looking. You need maybe 5,000 people tops for the rest of your career. So you think like that's in the 10-mile radius of your office currently right now. And some of you got bigger plans, and that's too. It's like you still can double down on that. The question though is, again, going back to being willingness to stand in that gap for them, knowing they're looking for something else, and the thing that you have, they know how you stand, right? And by the way, the trends are just, clear, crystal clear. But something else you said, Doc, there was, they are, yes, I could show you all the data and stats of people looking for something different. You guys know the data and stats of people in chronic pain. I mean, offices should be full, but the other thing is the technology does separate itself, right? To be able to kind of blend the best of both worlds, this thing called stem cell that people would have to inject on, combined with chiro, it's like all, adjustment. Now it's like the best of both worlds. And that's where you double two of like the actual technology. And so the brain actually loves that which is new and novel. There's 5 major brain triggers. One of them is that which is new and novel. It's called contrast. It's the power of contrast. And the brain is so wired to the fact that it's new and novel that it allows them to have one value for it, to differentiates you from anything else they've been. So they may have been to the naturopath. They may have been to the person doing some sort of other, whatever, ultrasound or other people things too. It's not this, right? This is one of its kind, fully patented. Nobody's ever done this. And this is also where your story, it's like, I wanted to be responsible for taking to this world. Like I have a responsibility for my community to take this to them. That's part of your story, by the way. They can argue your science. They can argue your research. They can't argue your story all day, every day. And if they leave there arguing your story, then you don't want them anyway. I'm saying they won't. When you tell your story in the right, appropriate way, and what's appropriate is you being full on heart, being able to be transparent. If there's no conflict, there's no story. The conflict is this inner turmoil. I introduced this into the office because I was sick and tired of seeing patients not get as well as I knew they were capable of getting, but I just didn't know how. And when a doctor admits I didn't know how, that it doesn't make you weak or less than, it actually empowers you. It makes you be the one who is willing to go to the next level to find out ways to help them. And now they are the recipient of your finding for them. And then when you say, listen, and by the way, like there's only so many of these, this is new and novel, and this is going to change the world. The one last thing I'll say too is, Dr. Matt, is, so one thing I'm on right now and studying this because there's so much compelling evidence is something called mirror neurons. Mirror neurons is essentially this: when you tell a story, this will resonate with a lot of you. When you, like, if you think of, well, even Sid Williams, for example, I didn't ever hear him live, I heard enough videos, but there's something that mirror neurons, that the way you hear something, the way that somebody says something, that the parts of your brain that you use to tell a story is the same parts of their brain that they hear it. The parts of your brain that you utilize to communicate the story, the same way they hear the story. So we know people buy on emotion, justify with logic. That buy-in on emotion, Daniel Kahneman, it's done. Like, there's no logic and facts. That's not what they validate with logic and facts. I say that because, I mean, you guys are the same way. Like, you can't, when you look at, I'm just going to make a makeshift nerve chart here, very bad, but right. When you look at, so you got all these nerves coming out here to organs, right? And I go through these with doctors. I'm like, go just explain the nerve chart for me once. And they're like, well, and I know it's a little bit different to me. Like, no, like if you're a patient. And I realized, like, for me, and I want you guys to know this, I can't look at a nerve chart without, like, first off, I have context to know they've never seen it like this before, but they need to see it. Not because the way I see it, but the fascination. The brain runs the body and it goes out to all the organs. Like, this isn't a chiropractic thing, this is a natural health thing. This is a physiology thing. Every doctor learns this way. It's just that this has to run through the spine, right? So how does this apply? This isn't a chiro talk. This is, you have to understand, you have these cells in your body that are constantly out there looking to heal and repair. And the problem is they're all over the body. And when you have areas of, and obviously you're the expert at this, Matt, but like, we want to isolate. If there was a way to isolate them, to get them to focus on the areas that you're having pain, so that it could come in and use your own body's recuperative cells, get rid of the junk, get rid of the waste, remove the inflammation that's causing that pain. And if there was a way to do it, it would be magical. Well, it's not magic. It's called science. And that's what this new technology that nobody knows about, by the way. And the ones that are finding out about this, it's going to be on wound healing and all the, you're going to see this. You're on the cutting edge of this thing. And my point in saying any of this, guys, is, you see, like, I can't help but get excited about that, because what I get excited about is their future. I get excited about them having a solution. Like, you guys have seen it, the people that are in pain and they get results. Like, so how are we communicating this? Is it very monotone? Because the way the monotone is that's how they're hearing it. When they hear it that way and they buy on emotion, now you literally just engage the skeptical, resistant, factual processing centers of the brain. And now you have to have the perfect pitch, overcome every objection that they've ever had, their previous experience, what they've had, what they're comparing it to, in order to actually get them to convert. Versus that mirror neuron says, the mirror neuron effect basically says, hey, what I'm passionate about, your brain, you receive that with that passion. But here's the kicker: it has to be authentic and genuine. You can't manufacture it. People smell that from a mile away. And so I just would challenge you out there and maybe release you to this, like be okay with being that passionate, convicted human who wants the best for them. And I know you are, but don't be like, you got to be all reserved, and like, be you. And so, that research is fascinating.
That is so cool. And I mean, I think that was the biggest thing that you guys kept honing in on me. It's like, Duro, you're authentic. You know, there are a lot of thought leaders out there, but you took this little concept and you turn it. We are now in 600 clinics across the country with this little less is more concept. And the doctors that are out there, I mean, I believe the real beauty of this technology is that we know within 10 minutes of that first appointment if these patients are candidates or if they qualify for this. And that's probably the most powerful tool that we use. And you don't need a 2-day or a 3-day. And the beauty is that this is very accessible. It's very user-friendly. And again, a lot of times new things like this get confused with magic. It's futuristic. And I loved how you said that. And Dan, not only did he, experience this and help me kind of build my story, but also, he dove deep into the science. He knows about Dr. Holfeld and the cardiologist and how versatile this is. I mean, when you have a cardiologist surgeon who is basically saying this is helping really activate the body's own innate immune system by activating toll-like receptor 3, and how that helps create that whole cascade of regenerative healing. I mean, like, this is cutting edge. And understand this, there's 600 offices out there with this, 50 on a waiting list. But over the next 30 months, we'll place 900 more of these. That's how, and we're just scratching the tip of the iceberg. So your story not only helps tell that patient about getting an opportunity at this, but it's also, you got to start thinking about your doctors, your friends you went to school with, who else can utilize this. You know, one of the biggest things I fought with John Warlick about is he kind of thought he was Coca-Cola. He thought he had to sell this device to every person with a parched throat that was thirsty. And I was like, no, this isn't for everybody. This is the elite of the elite. There's only a certain amount of early adopters that are going to take this right now. And if you look at that, you know, technology chart, and when people are adopting this, we're still in the first 0.5% of the entire chiropractic population just in North America. So Dan, anything you can tell us about that, being an early adopter, helping, you know, really invest in your community, any things like that, closing wise, that you can help us, that would be great.
Yeah, another thing that is so key for the human brain is wired for that which is new and novel, but then also, you know, scarcity, meaning people want more of what they can get less. So people want more what they can get less of. It's just a fascinating thing. So how would you, you know, how do you take that? It's like, you know, somebody sitting in front of you. I mean, you're lucky. I mean, they're lucky that this is in there, that they have access to this. And then the way I love to say about this, because you guys have all been around. I mean, when you listen to, you know, Dr. Matt, like, this is going, like, the thing I think about too as a doc, you're like, you don't want to be left behind. Like, you don't want to hear about this in 2 years on some of the biggest platforms and biggest media and the biggest whatever. And Joe Rogan's talking about how he, you know, has gotten his life back with this, and that, you know, and you two have missed over the opportunity, or your friend or your colleague had missed over the opportunity. Like, you got to realize that's just time. Like, it's not like if it's going to happen, it's just when it's going to happen. With technology like this and the patents that are on there, nobody can replicate it. Nobody's going to emulate it. They're going to try, but it's like with a real Slim Shady, please stand up. There's only one. And so you want to make sure, one, you're capitalized on it, which you guys are because you're on this line. But two, you have friends and colleagues that need to have this. Don't let them get left behind where they're going to hear it. Like I said, I mean, Joe Rogan, I mean, it's he had 11 million views when per episode, I think, here earlier this year in February, and CNN was like 298,000 per episode or whatever, Anderson Cooper. And so you look at this, even the greatest NBC show, I think, was like 8.4. And it's like, but it just takes one time. So, you know, anything cream always rises to the top. And so being able to walk in your office tomorrow and be like, you know, this thing's like, you're going to hear about, like, people are going to eventually hear about this. You are on the ground level. That's like being able to, you know, run Facebook ads in 2010, you know, when nobody knew about it, or, you know, being, you know, invested in Facebook in 2006. Like, if you would have done it, you would have put every single, right. So that's what we're dealing with. And, unfortunately, I mean, this isn't a good statistic, but just the reality is 1 out of every 3 people are dealing with a chronic pain problem. Chronic pain, 1 out of every 3. 1 out of every 3. 33%. I did a chronic pain program. This is about 3 years ago. Josh and I did. 1 out of every 3 people are in chronic pain. So you don't think, right? You guys know this. Like, they're everywhere. They are everywhere. And then the beauty is when you can divorce yourself from saying, hey, I can help you, and it's saying, we'll know exactly if we can help you. It's another trigger of the brain. Hey, I'm going to find out if we can help you. If we can, we'll know that. If we can't, we'll tell you that. We'll know that, and we'll be able to tell you that. We're not going to tell, like, there are certain people that can't be helped with this. So we need to find out. That actually doesn't, that doesn't deter. That actually is attractive. When somebody says, oh, now they want to qualify themselves versus not. Say, you know what, we can't help everybody, but this technology, what it can, it literally transforms lives. But there are a small percentage of people that can't be helped by this, and we find out, and that's why we'll know within, again, whatever, 24 hours after, or whatever the time is.
And again, that is the beauty about it. And I'll tell you what, you have to acknowledge that to you. Like, hey, I stop right there. And like, after doing the probe, and like, Do you think this is normal or abnormal tissue? Oh, it's so bad. It's so bad. Okay, Mrs. Smith, the good thing is you are a candidate. And what we're going to do now is turn down the energy level to a healing mode, and you're going to get your first treatment. And they're like, what? Yeah. So we're going to hover over those bad spots a little longer. The other thing I do, and guys, this is worth $1 million. The one thing I always do is these people have been to doctor after doctor after doctor. So the first thing I say to them right before I get started, I say, Mrs. Smith, I have one rule here. And they're like, what's that? I'm like, no screaming. No, I'm just kidding. The one rule is if we help you, you have to tell others. Okay. Oh yeah, because again, they've been to everywhere. No one's helped them. They're already told their bridge partners that they're like, I'm going to this, crazy chiropractor. We're going to see what happens. But it's like, they have no preconceived ideas. And when you do help them and they're walking up and you pick your phone up to start documenting whatever comes out of their mouth, I always say, Mrs. Smith, don't forget our deal. Well, what was that? You were going to tell others. Yes, I know, and they're so happy. And it's the same thing with my doctors. When I go in to train them, I say to them, I'll be honest. I mean, they're like, who do I get for training? I go, you get all those patients who've been so loyal to you over the last 20 years, who, conservative care hasn't really been able to address all of their issues. And then the other thing I say to the doctors on that training day is like, look, if we exceed your expectations for this first day, I expect at least 2 or 3 names over the next 45 days. Who else, some of your peers or your friends from school that could benefit. And again, that is like the true source of how you drive a referral-based practice, or what we call a waiting list medical device company, right? Because we're 75 days out. By August, that will be cleared up. Dan, I can't
let me say one more
ahead.
thing there, because so I read the book, reread it usually every year, Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman. He wrote it in 1995. The thing about referrals, and I just want to hit on this, people refer for one reason and one reason only. It's because of status. If you are going to refer to a movie or to a restaurant or to a car dealership, it's because it makes you look good. They're going to refer somebody else because it makes them look good. And so one of the ways, and I kind of teach this in a couple different ways, but you brought this up and it reminded me of, because not everybody, like the way you do that, Dr. Matt, you are so emotionally intelligent, and your personality, you can pull some of that off, and others may struggle with it and maybe even risk looking a little weird and looking a little bit needy. Like, oh, you're going to tell. One of the things that all you have to do, one addition to actually driving a referral, is just saying, hey, Matt, here's the one thing. You could tell here, like, I'm super passionate about this technology, and you know why, and they're going to tell you, yeah, well, I just heard the stat the other day that one out of every 3 people in our community are in some form of chronic pain. And what are most of them doing? Unfortunately, they're taking medications and just leaving, and they have to live. It's the only way they can live with it. But I just think about, what if they knew? And the one reason why I'm so passionate about this, because if they knew that this could be something that could help them. And so my question is, how did you get here, right? You could just see, I'm just engaging because ultimately what I'm doing is I'm asking them enough questions for them to like say, huh. So that's one way. Another way is always after they've gotten a result. If they come in and they have gotten a result, like, wow, doc, like I feel like I got 30%, like I can move my knee again. I haven't been able to move like this. And you're like, high five, Mary, that's awesome. That is awesome. Can you, like, think about this. All I did is put this baton with this little kind of this light waves coming out of it. That, like, think about how crazy that is. My question to you is, who probably needs this? Well, and we're not saying, we don't want to say everybody. We're saying people just like you, right? So who do you know that could possibly benefit? Because we do have a wait list, but we like to help our patients, people, first and foremost. We want to help your people. So you see how, like, it's an engagement. It's always ask, right? But if you ask questions, but I just say, you see how everything is led on my motive. My motive is, this isn't about me or my office. My motive is the fact that there's so many people out there sick and suffering with chronic pain, and they don't need to be, or they possibly don't need to be. And this could be a source for them to get help. And nobody's ever going to say, wow, are you trying to drum up business? No. And if they do, like, no, they're going to be like, wow, this guy's, this gal's on fire. Like they want to help more people. And so, yeah, that's why story is so powerful, because nobody's going to argue. I had a client one time, they're like, are they going to argue? I just feel like weird because they came here for them, they came here for them. Why would they want to hear about my story? And I said, you're right. They came here for them, but you're in a service-based business. And so they're either going to make up a story in their mind about what your true motive is and why you do what you do, or you're going to actually tell them. So they're there for them, but the only way they're buying is the story about why you do what you do. So they're either making one up, or you're going to be the one that tells them. That's why your story is so powerful. And that's why they need to hear it, because they're there for them and they have to trust you and your practitioners, or, your people in your office. So there you have it.
Love it, guys. Little gems that will just build your practice to a higher level. Dan Sullivan, thank you so much. When's the next mastermind?
Oh man, it's
when is the next one? I'd love to invite some of our docs.
It's not till October. The next one in Nashville is October 22nd, but we have an online one in we have an online virtual marketing event in August 12th. So we can get data to you. That's online. They don't have to travel anywhere. So
yeah, I love that for more.
And dude, here's just the other thing is just I have a book coming out middle of July, and it talks all about this, called The Trust Formula. So I'll kind of notify people if they want to kind of dive more into this concept.
Absolutely. He's not only a gentleman and scholar, but he's also a member of Softwave University and an adjunct professor, we like to say. So thank you, Professor. And hey, thanks for everybody staying online. This will be, we'll also have this recording and Softwave Views. So thank you guys. Love it. Enjoy your family.